Hi, this is McGann, and I just finished doing a three-part segment on Coraline theories, but as soon as I got done and I rewatched them actually on YouTube, I realized that, holy crap, there's some more connections that I didn't even see that kind of sum up some of my theories and make them seem like they really work out. Just by chance, I had pulled this screenshot to use when I'm talking about the black cat, and I noticed the tear in the cat's ear. It's actually shaped like the Beldam's claw, which means that my theory that the cat could be working for the beldam actually, it seems to solidify it even more than just having a passive suggestion about it. And all that talk about, oh, the beldam hates me and she doesn't want me here but she can't keep me out, that's all just misdirection so that nobody suspects the cat of anything. But then I thought about the button eyes, and if the button eyes are so important to everything else that the beldam creates, then why doesn't the cat have them? Well, maybe she didn't create the cat, or maybe she didn't create it for the purpose of existing in the other world, at least. If you watch the show Young Justice, they have a devil-like kid character who's a villain. His name is Clarion, and he's a Lord of Chaos. Well, for Clarion to stay in the real world, he needs something to ground him, which is his familiar, Tikal, a cat. And to the ordinary eye, it's just a regular cat. Nobody bats an eye at it, but it allows that demon to get access to the real world. And maybe that's exactly what's happening with the beldam, is that she's got her familiar and it allows her to have a reach in the real world. Which would mean that the black cat is scouting for children to bring to the beldam, and that's why he's hanging around the kids. And the cat very vaguely tells Coraline that the beldam just wants something to love. And it's such a weird kind of thing to say, and it doesn't really match up with any of the actions that we see within the movie. But now, if you look at The Last Unicorn, the humans get very frustrated with the talking cat character, and the cat tells them, well, I'm a cat, and no cat ever gave anyone a straight answer. So maybe the cat is being dodgy towards Coraline and giving her kind of a sarcastic answer because he doesn't want to deal with actually telling her anything that he knows. Because for someone who is constantly in the other verse, he seems to have no clear idea of what's going on or why. And we see that moment where the cat grabs the mouse and he clenches down on it and the sand pours out and he kills it essentially. And we think that that's because the cat is trying to help Coraline, but what if the cat is just jealous because he doesn't want to see the beldam use another henchman? He doesn't want to be replaced, he thinks he's good enough, and he doesn't like the mice taking his place, and then you have the obvious cat and mouse kind of dynamic anyways, where he wouldn't like it any which way you slice it. And bonus, the cat kills the mouse in front of Coraline, so Coraline thinks that the cat has her back and believes anything he says from that point on. And even in my theory where I talked about the doll, is somebody sent the doll to the beldam that was not the mice and then received it back, and that could have also easily been the cat. The cat could have dropped the doll off and picked it back up, left it out somewhere for YB to find, or maybe the cat is able to communicate with YB and told him what to do specifically with the doll. Because look at YB's face in this screenshot. Does he not look guilty as all get out? He looks like he knows something's up, and I still believe that he dropped that doll off at Coraline's house before ever meeting her. And really, there is no reason for the Lovett family to at all worry about YB being abducted by the beldam unless he goes into the house or falls into the well. So it makes no sense to let him get near either of those places knowing the issues unless it's a diversion. And even if the cat does work for the beldam, he could still be related to the Lovett family. And he could just sort of be cursed, similar to how we saw the cat Binks in Hocus Pocus. Like, he was a man that was turned into a cat, and even though that cat really didn't serve the witches, I mean, I imagine that there's not a far-fetched scenario out there where a witch could turn a human into a cat to serve as her familiar in the real world. If we do go with that theory, then I would think it's more likely that the black cat is YB's father and not his great-grandfather. Because we never get any kind of mention about YB's parents throughout the entire movie. It seems to be implied that he lives with his grandmother, and that would kind of fill up a gap really nicely. Because if Grandma Lovett never moved away from the area, perhaps her own son went into the other world, and then he ends up becoming the cat because that's just the most useful thing he can be to the beldam at that time. Because a big issue with the reincarnation theory is that it goes with believing that the dates on the candy jars correlate with when children moved in or disappeared to the Pink Palace. And as I mentioned in one of my theories, if you look at how the kids are dressed and how they're referred to, that doesn't quite make sense, because a pioneer girl would be from the 1850s, which is about the time that the Pink Palace would have been built. And then a Huck Finn Jr. boy would be from about the 1880s, so that makes them around 30 years apart. Now, about 30 years from that would be 1921. And we have to assume, since Miss Spink and Miss Forcible have the candy in their house, 1921 would be as far back as they would be able to know anything that happened within the house. So that's a date that correlates to them. And then 1936 would be Mr. Bobinski, which is 15 years later. And then 24 years after that, we have 1960, which would be when the Lovett family moved into the Pink Palace. And so that would make a 49-year stretch between 1960 and 2009 when the movie was released. So something needs to fill in the gap actually there between Mrs. Lovett's twin sister and Coraline. Because if the beldam isn't specifically after children and she's just after people or souls or egos or energy or something like that, then we have 15 to 30-year gaps in between when she takes victims. So somebody needs to be there between 1960 and 2009. Grandma Lovett's son would not have a candy dish date that would correlate with his moving in because he was already there. And maybe she had more than one son and he's Wybie's uncle, but he could have been taken as a child or he could have been taken as an adult, and that would fill in the gap nicely. And back to the button eyes, if they are for the beldam to see and that is their main purpose, then why bother giving somebody like Coraline button eyes and telling her that's how you stay here? It doesn't really make sense. But just taking for face value that we know that the beldam can see through the button eyes, what if all the ghost kids that Coraline finds behind the mirror are fake? They're just another creation of the beldam and her other verse, and Coraline is still the primary target. Because as I mentioned in another video for a theory, that other Wybie is helping Coraline under the control of the beldam so that Coraline believes that she is getting out when she's not. It really works well into playing with that and getting Coraline to keep returning to the other world and then making her go back to what she believes is the real world and never questioning that she's not in the real world, because it's so confusing and so stressful and so convoluted. And the whole show of the button eyes is just to scare the crap out of Coraline so that when she ends up in the fake real world that she believes is her home and she's actually in the Pink Palace limbo zone, she's never going to think twice about it because it's not scary there and nobody's trying to sew buttons into her eyes there. So going to that extent of faking it and faking the need for button eyes, a cat that doesn't have button eyes would be a very powerful tool for convincing someone that they're not in the other world when they are.